Aloha, I'm Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. As a veteran of 2 Middle East deployments, I know firsthand the cost of war. I know how important it is that our Commander-in-Chief has the sound judgment required to know when to use America's military power and when not to use that power. As a Vice Chair of the DNC, I'm required to stay neutral in Democratic primaries, but I cannot remain neutral any longer. The stakes are just too high. That's why today I'm endorsing Senator Bernie Sanders to be our next President and Commander-in-Chief of the United States. We need a Commander-in-Chief who has foresight, who exercises good judgment, and who understands the need for a robust foreign policy which defends the safety and security of the American people, and who will not waste precious lives and money on interventionist wars of regime change. Such counterproductive wars undermine our national security and economic prosperity. As these elections continue across the country, the American people are faced with a very clear choice. We can elect a president who will lead us into more interventionist wars of regime change, or we can elect a president who will usher in a new era of peace and prosperity. It's with this clear choice in mind that I'm resigning as Vice Chair of the DNC so that I can strongly support Bernie Sanders as the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. And now I ask you, stand with me and support Bernie Sanders.
Yo creo que siempre voy a luchar mientras yo vea a mis hijos felices y que ellos estén bien. Voy a seguir luchando por ellos para darles lo mejor. Pues mis hijos son como el motor de mi vida que le da. Mi familia aquí son mis 3 niños. Aquí en Immokalee, Florida. Immokalee es un pueblo pequeño, pero está lleno de gente muy trabajadora y también muy amable. Es un pueblo muy bonito, en medio de todo lo que ha habido en el trabajo, abusos en el campo. Yo cuando vine de México, empecé a trabajar en el campo. Pues los tomates que yo pisco son los que se usan como en ensaladas, ¿cómo se va a decir? Americanos. Había más abusos de los patrones hacia sus trabajadores o de que no les proveían lo necesario como agua o los baños. Los patrones se enojaban de que si ya no querían seguir trabajando, hasta se agarraban a golpes. Solamente en las noches a veces uno se pone como a veces hasta a llorar porque no le alcanza. También a los niños les afecta porque a veces no alcanzaba para todo lo que era como la comida. No conocen, no saben por todo lo que uno tiene que pasar, porque tenemos familias. Yo empecé a participar como a las protestas por comida justa, fue en el 2010. Comida Justa está pidiendo que las grandes corporaciones paguen como 1 centavo más por libra de tomate para que así también les llegara a los trabajadores lo que es justo. Empecé a participar porque me pareció que es bueno que haya personas que se preocupan por mejorar las condiciones de trabajo, porque es ahí donde menos se preocupan la gente.
In January of 2008, I went to Immokalee what I discovered was a human tragedy. Workers were being paid starvation wages and subjected to abusive labor practices.
Bernie Sanders, él se interesó en la vida de los trabajadores y quiso saber de las luchas políticos que muchas veces nunca llegan aquí a Immokalee. Él no solo se quedó con lo que vio aquí en Immokalee.
We heard the voices of Immokalee, workers who were at the lowest rung of the economic ladder, workers who had no rights.
Se fue a Washington e hizo una junta con los senadores, se puede decir, para que conocieran lo que se vive aquí en Immokalee. Y sí hay más derechos y más apoyo como a los trabajadores. Se empezó a ver como los cambios en el pago. Sí fue algo mejor. Ya tenía para comprarle cositas a los niños. Y pues sí, eso cambia a la persona.
But how many more Immokalees are there? How many fields or factories are there? We have to ask ourselves, who benefits from this exploitation? And to understand that it is not only the Immokalee workers who suffer, but every worker in America, because that pushes us into a race to the bottom.
Going back to the old neighborhood can be hard sometimes. Walls have been built invisibly around the old neighborhood, and that police brutality is used to keep folks hemmed in, and frankly, opportunity locked out. I spent my entire life in the civil rights movement. I came up in the NAACP like my mom came up in the NAACP, like my father came up in the Congress of Racial Equality, like Bernie Sanders came up in the Congress of Racial Equality.
Black Lives Matter. We need to combat institutional racism from top to bottom in a broken criminal justice system.
I'm supporting Bernie Sanders for president, and all of us who have joined this campaign are there for the same reason. He has always fought for a populist position of let's fight for all of our families as if they are our own.
I'm Bernie Sanders, and I approve this message.
This is everything that I have, my family. Family should be important to everyone. Mostly I like being a mother. Alyssa, she's 6 years old. That's my baby, my only child. She likes to read me books, sit down and talk with me about her school.
But there's a lot of sand in the car.
Recently, she just learned about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King. She asked me, did Rosa Parks not give up her seat for a white man? And I said, yes. She said, but those in the old days, right, Mommy? And I had to explain to her that it's not really over. This is what Mommy is. I'm an activist. And the same thing Martin Luther King was. He fought for our rights. This is the same thing I'm doing in honor of her pop-pop. My dad's name is Eric Garner. No one gets to see their parents' last moments, and I was able to see my dad die on national TV. They don't know what they took from us. He wasn't just someone that no one cared for him or no one loved him. He was loved dearly. Alyssa misses my dad. She tells me, are you okay, Mom? Do you miss Pop-Pop? She wish she was here, so her mom wouldn't be sad anymore. I'm just trying to get the truth out there to tell his side of the story. He was being the loving, caring man that he was, and he was murdered.
Every Tuesday.
For a whole year, I've protested every Tuesday and Thursday. I feel like a representative for people throughout this whole nation because I'm doing this, I'm speaking out, me being his daughter. And that's what I want to do. I just want to tell my truth. I'm never giving up. I'm never going to forget, and I don't want the world to forget what happened to my dad. Our people died for this. Martin Luther King died for this. Malcolm X died for this. And who were they? They was protesters. I'm behind anyone who's going to listen and speak up for us. And I think we need to believe in a leader like Bernie Sanders.
It is not acceptable to me that we have seen young black men walk down streets in this country, be beaten and be killed unjustly.
There's no other person that's speaking about this. People are dying. This is real. This is not TV. We need a president that's going to talk about it.
The African American community knows that on any given day, some innocent person like Sandra Bland can get into a car, and then 3 days later, she's going to end up dead in jail.
I believe Bernie Sanders is a protester.
When a police officer breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable.
He's not scared to go up against the criminal justice system. He's not scared.
I want to see an America where when young black men walk down the street, they will not be harassed by police officers. They will not be killed. They will not be shot.
And that's why I'm from Bernie.
One of the states in the country with the largest number of delegates. We look forward to winning here. We're working very hard to do that. And I think we will win here because the differences that Secretary Clinton and I have on some major issues are fairly significant. And that is, I have opposed virtually all of these disastrous trade policies, NAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China, which have cost this country and Michigan huge numbers of jobs. Secretary Clinton has supported those trade agreements. So I think that's a difference that the people of Michigan will increasingly appreciate.
And then staying in Michigan, obviously the Flint water crisis has become a national tragedy. Everyone's talking about it, but some research has shown that Flint is not the only city in America that's dealing with these problems.
That's right.
And as I'm sure you read, Nicholas Kristof wrote in February that the CDC estimates over 535,000 children between the ages of 1 and 5 are impacted by lead poisoning throughout this country. So as president, what will you do to not only shrink that number, but also help these struggling cities combat?
Well, thank you very much. That's an excellent question. This is the United States of America. This is the year 2016. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. The problem is that we have massive levels of income and wealth inequality, and almost all of the new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. And therefore you have cities like Detroit, Flint, and many, many other communities, as you indicate, all over this country that are struggling with inadequate funding. So what I do believe is that we need a massive federal program to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. We used to have the best infrastructure in the world. That is no longer the case. It is not just water systems. It is schools, it is roads, it is bridges. In my state of Vermont, many of our bridges are in need of significant repair. We can put 13 million people back to work at good paying jobs, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. That is exactly what I intend to do.
And will you urge Congress to restore the funding of anti-lead programs that were
Of course.
cut in 2012?
I mean, of course. I mean, if that's not a no-brainer, I don't know what is a no-brainer. The idea, and I met with a number of people in Flint quietly and in a private setting. What I heard was so distressing, so horrific, that I could not believe that I was hearing this in the United States of America in the year 2016. I don't think it takes much discussion to come to the conclusion that we should not be poisoning children in the United States of America, that people are entitled to clean water.
And then another problem Michigan is facing, as well as Indiana, is the plague of meth and opioids and drugs. According to the CDC, Michigan saw a 13% increase in drug overdose deaths in 2013 and 2014, and Indiana saw a 9.6% increase. So, as president, what will you do to not only lower these statistics, but help put a dent in the number of people becoming addicted to these drugs?
Well, let me just tell you, you think it's a serious problem in Michigan, Indiana. It is a more serious problem in New Hampshire and Vermont. So we are very familiar with this problem. We're familiar with people dying every day from drug overdoses. For a start, what we need to do is bring about a revolution in mental health. Drug addiction is not an easy illness to deal with, but we have to look at it as a health issue, not a criminal issue. And we got to open the doors up to in treatment facilities to those people who need it. And that is not the case right now. If you're addicted to a drug and you want to get treatment, often you have to wait months. That is crazy. We got to make sure that we have the facilities available right now. Number two, in terms of opiates, I think the pharmaceutical industry has got to begin to understand they just cannot produce the types of medicine, drugs that they are doing, which are now falling into the hands of people, getting them hooked onto opiates and then going on to heroin. And thirdly, obviously, we need locally, we need doctors not to be overprescribing this medicine as well.
Gotcha. Our station that we're from is based in South Bend, Indiana, so we cover Indiana and Michigan. And guns in Indiana are a hot topic, and as President Obama said in his January town hall, he blamed 30 to 40% of the guns in Chicago as coming from Indiana. So you're from a rural state. In terms of gun control, do you think there has to be a divide between how guns are controlled in rural areas compared to cities, and what would that be?
No, I think we have a national issue, and I think what we have got to do is everything possible. Nobody thinks there's a magical solution, but we have got to do everything that we possibly can to end these mass killings where somebody walks in and just starts shooting people. I believe that what we need to do is aggressively expand and improve the instant background check. At the end of the day, what we want to see is that no person in this country gets a gun who should not have a gun, and that means people with criminal backgrounds, that means people who are mentally unstable, and that means significantly expanding and improving the instant background check. It means dealing with a straw man situation where people are now buying guns legally and then selling it to criminals. It means dealing with the gun show loophole where people are avoiding the instant background check. So there's a lot that has to be done. In my state, we have a majority of the people who own guns, they hunt, they do target practice, and that's great. But they agree, the vast majority of the American people agree, that sensible gun safety legislation is imperative to keep guns out of the hands of people who should not.
By the fact that he will not attack anyone, including his opponent, Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders is persistent like Harry Truman, as he does not give up. He does not let any obstacles discourage him from doing the right thing despite major obstacles.
All right.
from millions and millions of people, whereas his opponents get millions from a handful of people. Bernie Sanders will have no conflict of interest unless you consider $27.16 a conflict. Bernie Sanders, unlike his opponent, does not pay speaking fees from Wall Street. Now, the most important reason I'm here, Warren is an industrial manufacturing city. We've lost thousands of jobs. We've lost a lot of residents. A lot of residents have lost their homes. Why? Because of one thing, NAFTA. Free trade. Bernie Sanders voted against NAFTA. And I remember in 1994, Bill Clinton, then president, said NAFTA is going to bring good jobs to America. And that's what since the free trade NAFTA was passed, we've lost 4.8 million manufacturing jobs, and the amount of money we've lost in the last 10 years by going to Mexico has been $600 billion we've lost. And that's lost money in Social Security and wages and unemployment, everything else. Our country today is a debtor nation. We owe $18 trillion because of all this free trade. And I got to tell you one thing I'm mad about. My dad was a worker. He worked for Dodge Truck. And I am sick and tired of hearing people say that American workers are lazy and they're overpaid. They're not lazy. I'm tired because of all this free trade. Let me tell you another thing. In Germany, the average worker makes $47 an hour plus all the benefits. In Japan, it's $35 an hour. South Korea is about that too. In most countries, the world now are paying their workers more in manufacturing countries. But if we send our 30,000 automobile to Mexico today, guess what it costs? It costs us $4,800 because they don't have to pay any tariff to come back here. We lose $4,800. That's unemployment benefits, that's Social Security and everything. And in Germany, a $30,000 car, they make $8,900 and we lose. So let's follow Bernie Sanders. Let's get rid of NAFTA. Let's get rid of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Get a good job, you can get benefits, and you can prepare your family for a better future. Also, in short, Bernie is a highly ethical and principled candidate for president. According to a recent poll, Bernie Sanders is rated #1 for being honest and trustworthy. Bernie Sanders, once he becomes president. Harry Truman said, America was not built on fear. America was built on courage, on imagination, and unbeatable determination to do the job at hand. And that's what Bernie Sanders would do. I'm fortunate to have a candidate for president who is trustworthy, honest, and idealistic. And I would ask you this. Do you believe that a President Bernie Sanders will make America great again? You believe that?
Two dreamers that they brought on board to help put together a platform on immigration. And it was amazing for me because this is not something that we're putting together out of just policy because we're policy experts. This is something that we were putting together because we've been through it. I used to live in the shadows. I used to live in fear, but I decided to step out to tell people who I am. My name is Erica Andiola. I'm the National Press Secretary for Latino Outreach for Bernie Sanders 2016, and I am undocumented.
Our job is not to divide. Our job is to bring people together. If we do not allow them to divide us up by race, by sexual orientation, by gender, by not allowing them to divide us up by whether or not we were born in America or whether we're immigrants, when we stand together as white, and black, and Hispanic, and gay, and straight, and woman, and man, when we stand together and demand that this country works for all of us rather than the few, we will transform America, and that is what this campaign is about. It's bringing people together.
Yeah. Bernie is coming next. So right now, in this moment, let us talk about where we are as a nation. In these times when we are at our most polarized since the eve of the Civil War, when our neighbors' voting rights are being suppressed from Mississippi to right here in Michigan, when they're taking the power away from the people with this crazy emergency manager system. Let's talk about our American dream, which shone so brightly here 50 years ago when Detroit was the wealthiest city in the country. Then we got a place for you to go, and it's not the White House. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we can do better. We can move forward. We can build a world beyond endless stupid wars.
We can enrich our nation with trade that works for all of us and lifts all boats. We can invest in our love for our children through education and stop investing in our fear of other people's kids through mass incarceration. No, you don't come to the American people and say, either you can dream a little or you can dream not at all. Big dreams built Detroit. Big dreams built Baltimore. Big dreams built America. And it's time for us to dream big and do big and get things done for all of our families. And that is why it is my pleasure to announce the next President of the United States.
Thank you.
Wonderful time. Thank you so much. Mayor House for his strong support. I appreciate it very much. Let me thank Ben Jealous, the former president of the NAACP. Ben's remarks, I don't know what I'm going to say now. He said it all. All right, what I'm going to try to do tonight is to do something very radical in American politics.
That I would be lying to you. And so what I have to do as a candidate for president is to be honest with you. Because I believe that if we have the courage to look our problems right in the face, and if we don't bury them, we can address them, we can resolve them. So what are some of the issues that are out there that you all know about, but we got to bring them right up? Number one. You know what? I was just going to say that. So you got to give me a little bit of time here. You jumped the gun. Here's the issue. Gentleman just hit the nail on the head. Look, I'm the former chairman of the U.S. Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. And I have tried to do everything I can and will continue as president to do everything I can to protect the men and women who put their lives on the line to defend us. But as the chairman of that committee, I had the honor of meeting a whole lot of veterans from World War II on to Iraq and Afghanistan. And I thought, you look out at these people, some of them who came home without legs or arms. They put their lives on the line to defend American democracy. And I worry very much about what is going on in American democracy today. And at the top of my list is the need to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. You know what democracy is about? Democracy is about a meeting like this where people come out and you can agree with me, you can disagree with me, you can vote for me, you can vote against me. That's called democracy. But what democracy is not about is billionaires buying elections.
election, it is estimated that the Koch brothers and a few other billionaires. Oh, you know about the Koch brothers. Smart group of people. Okay. Koch brothers and a few other billionaires will spend approximately $900 million to buy this election for candidates who are going to represent the wealthy and the powerful. When you have one family and a few other billionaires spending more money in an election than the entire Democratic Party or Republican Party, that is not democracy. That is oligarchy, and we are going to stop that. Now, when I talk about some of the differences between Secretary Clinton and myself, this is one of those differences, and I'll tell you why. Secretary Clinton has a number of super PACs. One of her super PACs recently reported that they raised $25 million from special interest, $15 million from Wall Street alone. Now, every candidate in the history of the world, Democrat, Republican, when they receive huge amounts of money from Wall Street or the drug companies or the fossil fuel industries, what they always say, not going to impact me. And our question is, if it's not going to impact their decisions, why would Wall Street be spending $15 million? And this is not just Hillary Clinton, this is all the Republican candidates as well, receiving huge amounts of money. Second point with Secretary Clinton. I kind of think if you're going to be paid $225,000 for a speech, it must be a fantastic speech. A brilliant speech which you would want to share with the American people, right? You know, $225,000, extraordinary speech. Shakespearean speech. So we all look forward to seeing it. All right, second issue that we talk about in this campaign is not just a corrupt campaign finance system. It is a rigged economy. Now, what do we mean by a rigged economy? What we mean is that for a start, millions of people in the middle class, working people, today are working longer hours for lower wages. Okay? That true? Okay. Now, this is despite a huge explosion of technology and an increase in worker productivity. So you're producing more, you're being paid less. In my state, and I'm sure it's true in Michigan, we got people working not one job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, trying to cobble together enough income and health care to take care of their families. You got mom working, you got dad working, you got kids working. We are working the longest hours of any people in the industrialized world. You all know that? We work longer. The Japanese are very hard-working people. We work longer hours per year than the Japanese do. And hey, I'm going to get to that. Give me a minute. Give me a minute. Both parents are working, right? Now, at the end of all of that, 58% of all new income generated today goes to the top 1%. That is what a part of what a rigged economy is about. You work longer hours for low wages, almost all new income and wealth goes to the people on top. Let me give you another example
of a rigged economy. You know, my Republican colleagues, governors all over the country, they talk about welfare abuse, about all those poor people ripping off the welfare system, right? All right, I want to talk to you, I do want to talk to you about welfare abuse, but in a slightly different way than the Republicans. I want to tell you which family in America receives more welfare than anybody else. This is a brilliant audience. We are going to win here in Michigan with... Can't believe it. This guy knew what I was going to say. You know the answers to my questions. What do I have to say? All right, here's the story. And this is important to understand, because this is what a rigged economy is about. Turns out that the Walton family that owns Walmart is the wealthiest family in America. I think they have about $60, $70 billion in wealth. Okay, they're doing pretty good. But they pay their Walmart workers wages that are so low that many of their employees have to go on Medicaid, food stamps, or subsidized housing, right? Who do you think pays for the food stamps, Medicaid? You do. So on behalf of the Walton family, I want to thank you very much. You are very nice people to help subsidize them. They're very grateful for this. All right, but the truth is that now is the time for the Walton family, the richest family in America, to get off of welfare, pay their workers a living wage. Third part of what we're talking about in this campaign, and Ben Jealous talked about it eloquently, and he's one of the great experts in this country about it, is a broken criminal justice system. Now, what this campaign is about, most importantly, is demanding that the American people not think small, but start thinking outside of the box, outside of the status quo, outside of what television wants you to believe are your options. You know, the corporate media, they go on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They talk about everything except the issues most important to the American people. And here's one of those issues. We have to ask ourselves, why in America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, why do we have more people in jail than any other country on earth? And the people in jail are disproportionately African American, Latino, Native Americans. We have right now youth unemployment that is off the charts. We don't talk about it much, but I want you to know. We did a study on this. Economists did a study for me. For kids between 17 and 20, they're white, real unemployment 33%, Latino 36%, African American 51%. If anyone in this room, if anyone here tonight does not see the connection between this outrageously high rate of youth unemployment and the fact that we have so many people in jail, you are missing something very important. So here is a radical idea. You ready for a radical idea? Together, we are going to invest in jobs and education, not jails or incarceration. Okay, and let me also talk about other aspects of a broken criminal justice system. And go to my website, BernieSanders.com. We go through this issue at great length. But I want to mention just a few points. Turns out that the so-called war on drugs has failed and has resulted in millions and millions of people over a 30-year period getting criminal records and a whole lot of people ending up in jail with their lives ruined. Right now, under the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug alongside of heroin. Scientists are arguing, the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but nobody believes that marijuana is equivalent to heroin. So what we have proposed, and I've introduced legislation to do this, is to take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. In our federalist-type society, states can legalize it or not if they want to, but it should not be a federal crime. And here is the racial aspect of that, it turns out that according to studies, the white community and the black community do marijuana at about equal rates. But blacks end up being arrested 4 times more than whites for possession of marijuana. And when we talk about reforming the criminal justice system, it means police department reform as well. I am a former mayor, Burlington, Vermont, and I work very closely with the police. Vast majority of police officers in this country are honest, hard-working, enormously difficult job. But when a police officer, like any other public we have got to demilitarize local police departments around the country. We have got to make police departments look like the diversity of the communities they are serving. We have got to do away with minimal sentencing so that we give judges more discretion on how to propose sentences. Let me tell you something else. In my state of Vermont, New Hampshire is right next to us, and I know across this country we have a major, major crisis in opiate addiction and in heroin addiction. In a state like New Hampshire, they are losing 1 person per day from heroin overdose. What we have got to do is begin addressing as a health issue, not a criminal issue. And what that means is we have to greatly expand Now, let me take a moment to discuss some other disagreements myself and Secretary Clinton, that we raise money in very different ways. When I began this campaign, we had to make a decision. Unfortunately, in the real world, it takes hundreds of millions of dollars to run for President of the United States, maybe even more than that, maybe over $1 billion. That's a huge amount of money. Huge, I know. See, I can't use the word huge anymore. It always brings forth a response, but it's a lot of money. Very much. We chose to do it a different way. We went to the middle class and working class of this country, and we said, if you want real change in this country, if you want a candidate who's going to stand up to the billionaires and Wall Street, we need your help. And this is what's happened over the last 10 months. And in a million years, when I began this campaign, I never, ever would have predicted this could happen. What has happened is we have, thank you. What has happened, and this is revolutionary. You know, when I talk about a political revolution, we've already Anybody here know what the average contribution is? $27. In other words, and this is revolutionary. So instead of having a campaign dependent on the drug companies and Wall Street and the fossil fuel industry and billionaires, we are dependent on the work. To paraphrase Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, this is a campaign of the people, by the people, and for the people. Beyond how we raise money. There is an enormously important issue. The media doesn't deal with it at all. It's too important. And that of trade. Now, I know, trade is not a sexy issue. It is not. I know that. Media pays no attention to it at all. But here is what it amounts to. 30 or 40 years ago, this country began entering into what I considered then disastrous trade agreements written by corporate America and the big money interests. What these agreements were about, that's called NAFTA and CAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China and the Colombian Trade Agreement, Korean Free Trade Agreement, all of these free trade agreements were based on a certain basic premise. And that premise from corporate America was the following. Why would they want to pay workers in Michigan or Illinois or Ohio or Vermont $25, $30 an hour, a living wage, a middle-class wage? Why would they want to negotiate with unions? Why would they want to obey environmental laws when they can shut down in America, move to Mexico? Half a brain understood what these trade agreements were about with trade unionists in opposition to NAFTA. Well, all of the fears that many of us had in opposing these agreements one, 60,000 factories in America have shut down. Not all of it attributable to trade, but a lot of it. And regions like the Midwest, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois have been particularly hard hit. You have lost tens and tens of thousands of decent paying jobs. Corporations shut down, moved to China, moved to Mexico. I voted and helped lead the opposition against every one of these disastrous trade agreements. Secretary Clinton voted for virtually all of them. Now, there's another issue out there that distinguishes ourselves, and that is everybody here knows that foreign policy is a huge, it's a very important part of what a president does. Okay? And the reason for it is these are life and death issues. Now, in 2002, when I was Vermont's congressman, I listened very carefully. to what President Bush and Vice President Cheney and Don Rumsfeld. Yeah, you got it. Anyhow, they told us the reason why we had to invade Iraq, etc. And I listened carefully because I knew that the decision that Congress reached would result in some people in my own state not coming back alive. I listened very carefully, and I ended up not believing what they said. I voted against the war in Iraq. Secretary Clinton, who was then in the Senate, heard the same information that I did. I was in the House. She voted for the war. And that war, as all of you know, turned out to be one of the worst foreign policy disasters in the modern history of America. Now, in addition, in the last debate that I had with Secretary Clinton, she said something that really kind of blew me away. She said that Henry Kissinger thought that she did a very good job. I can't believe it. You guys know who Henry Kissinger is, right? And why one would look for approval from one of the worst, most destructive secretaries of state in the history of this country, I don't understand. Trust me, I do not want Henry Kissinger's approval. When that day comes, I know that I'll be doing something very wrong. Now, the reason that our campaign is doing as well as it is, and we've come a long, long way. We started at 3% in the polls, and now we're closing in. Some national polls actually have had us ahead. The reason that we are doing so well nationally and why I think we are going to win here in Michigan is because we are doing our best to listen to the people, not just wealthy campaign executives. We are listening to workers all over this country who tell me they cannot make it on $8 or $9 an hour. And that is why we are going to fight to end this absurd $7.25 minimum wage. And why we are going, good, you got it. Why we're going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour over the next 3 years. Now, we are listening to senior citizens. You don't read about this in the media also. But all over this country, you got seniors and disabled veterans, 75, 80, 90 years of age, trying to get by on $11,000 or $12,000 a year Social Security. And you know what? Nobody can get by on $11,000, $12,000 a year Social Security. A great nation is judged not by how many millionaires and billionaires it has, but by how it treats the most vulnerable among us. And the truth is, we do not treat our seniors particularly well. Now, my Republican colleagues, if you can believe it, and it really is hard to believe, they want to cut Social Security benefits. Well, I've got some bad news for them. Not only are we not going to cut those benefits, we're going to raise Social Security benefits.
We are listening to the veterans of this country who put their lives on the line to defend us, and they are telling us they want the health care and other benefits that they were promised, and we are going to give that to them. Throughout this campaign, in state after state, we have been listening to young people. And what young people are telling me is, why do we have to leave college $50,000, $70,000 in debt? How many people here have student debt? Okay. And I've talked to people. I talked to a guy in Iowa. Had to drop out of college, $60,000 in debt after 2 years. Woman in Burlington, Vermont, became a doctor, and for becoming a doctor, she ended up $300,000 in debt. A dentist in Iowa, $400,000 in debt. A guy in Nevada has been paying off his student debt for 25 years. More in debt today than he was when he took out that loan. Now, what we have got to understand, we've got to think outside of the box. Everybody here knows that education and learning is inherent in being a human being, right? Clearly, the goal of America is to make sure that all of our people get all of the education that they need and they want. That's not a radical idea. We should not be punishing people for getting an education. We should be rewarding them. And that is why I've introduced legislation and will make happen as president to do three things. Number one, in the year 2016, public education cannot just consist of first grade through 12th grade. That was a great idea historically. The world has changed. Today, in many respects, a college degree is the equivalent of what a high school degree was 50 years ago. You know, 50 years ago, somebody had a high school degree, they were doing really well, go out and get a great job. That is not the case today. That is why I believe that we have got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. Number two, young people and people not so young should not be forced to be paying off their student debt for decades. When that happens, you know, literally people can't buy a car, they can't buy a home, they can't get married, they can't have kids. That's pretty crazy stuff. So what we have proposed is to allow people with student debt to refinance their loans at the lowest interest rates they can find, substantially reducing student debt. Now, my critics say to me, well, Bernie, you know, that's a nice idea. You're Santa Claus. You're giving away all of this free stuff. How are you going to pay for it? I will tell you how we're going to pay for it. Look, and here is thinking outside of the box. When Wall Street, through their greed and recklessness and illegal behavior, helped destroy our economy, Congress bailed them out. I believe that right now we should impose a tax on Wall Street speculation, which brings in more than enough income to make public colleges and universities tuition-free and substantially reduce student debt. This campaign is listening to women. And what women are telling me all over this country is, why should I be working in an office across the room from some guy doing the same work as that guy, and I'm making 79 cents on the dollar compared to that guy? And that gap is even wider for African American women. And that is why I know that every man in this room will stand with the women in the fight for pay equity. And this campaign is listening to young couples with little babies. And what every psychologist knows is the most important years of human development are 0 through 4. Is that right? Now, if that is the case, why should it be that working couples all over this country are finding it extremely difficult to find quality, affordable childcare? We can create hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs by making sure that our kids have well-educated, well-trained educators taking care of the littlest and the youngest amongst us. And this campaign is listening to our Latino brothers and sisters. And they are saying they are tired of living in fear, and that they want to see, as I do, comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. In America today, there are a whole lot of people who are very, very angry. And they have a right to be angry. But what we have to understand is that we take out our anger on those people who are responsible for the problems, not scapegoat minorities. People are angry because they work longer hours for low wages, and they worry terribly about their kids, and they are seeing almost all new income and wealth being created in America go to the people on top. People are angry because in America today, the top 1/10 of 1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. People are angry because the 20 wealthiest people in this country own more wealth than the bottom half of America, bottom 50%. What we have got to do together as we address this rigged economy is create an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. Now, a few weeks ago, I visited privately with some parents from Flint, Michigan. And then later we had a public town meeting in Flint. But I sat behind closed doors talking to people, including a mother who has a 9-year-old daughter who until several years ago was a vivacious, outgoing, bright,
girl who did very, very well in school. Today, that girl is in special education because of the impact of lead poisoning on her intellectual development. And what I heard, you know, when you are a senator, you meet with all kinds of people and you hear all kinds of pain. That's what you do. But I don't think I have ever left a room as shattered as I was listening to the pain of what was going on in Flint. And really what I felt is I could not believe that I was listening to people who were living in the United States of America in the year 2016. This sounded like people in a third world desperate country. So what we are going to do, well, number one, as many of you know, I think when you have that kind of dereliction in duty, I think the governor should do the right thing and resign. I believe that if the local government does not have the resources, if the state government doesn't have the willingness, then the federal government has got to step in and make Flint, Michigan right. But when we talk about Flint, while Flint may be the worst example of a collapsing infrastructure, it is not the only example. Here's the truth. The truth is that all over this country, we have water systems that are failing, wastewater plants. In my state, many of the bridges that we have are in massive needs of repair. Roads falling apart, rail system way behind other countries, airports, levees, and dams. And that is why I believe that we should rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. We can and when we invest $1 trillion in our water systems and our roads and our bridges, we can create up to 13 million good-paying jobs. Now, once again, I am being attacked. Bernie, $1 trillion, my goodness, a lot of money. How are you going to pay for it? I'll tell you how we pay for it. Right now, you have major corporations in this country making billions of dollars in profit, stashing their profits in the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, and other tax havens, and in a given year, not paying a nickel in federal income tax. Together, we are losing as a nation about $100 billion every year. Together, we're going to end that outrageous loophole. They're going to pay their taxes. We'll use that money, rebuild our infrastructure. Now, Republican candidates for president, governor, Senate, House, they go around the country and they tell us how much they believe in family values. They just love families. But I want everybody here to understand what they mean by family values, and what they mean is that no woman in this room, in this state, in this country should have the right to control her own body. I disagree. What they mean by family values is that our gay brothers and sisters should not be able to be married. I disagree. My wife and I have been married 27 years. We have 4 kids and 7 beautiful grandchildren. We believe in family values, but they're not Republican family values.
When I talk about family values, I talk about ending the international embarrassment of the United States being the only major country on earth without paid family and medical leave. There is legislation in Congress that I want to see passed, 3 months paid family and medical leave. Now, I am a member of the U.S. Senate Committee on the Environment and the Committee on Energy. I have talked to scientists all over our country and all over the world. And let me simply tell you the truth. Climate change is real. Climate change is caused by human activity. Climate change is already doing devastating harm in our country today and around the world. And here's also what the scientists tell us. If we do not get our act together very quickly, this planet, our only planet, will be between 5 and 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer by the end of the century. And that means more drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, more rising sea levels flooding coastal regions, more acidification of the ocean, and more international conflict as people fight over limited natural resources. We have a moral responsibility to leave this planet in a way that is healthy and habitable for our kids and our grandchildren. And that is why I believe we have got to work with China, Russia, India, countries all over the world, and have the courage to take on the fossil fuel industry and transform our energy system. One of the issues that the media does not talk about at all is the fact, and it really is an embarrassment. Look, you know, I have conservative friends, I disagree. They believe what they believe, I believe what I believe. But in this issue of climate change, you do not have not had one Republican candidate for president prepared to listen to the scientists. I mean, and this is really scary stuff, because you can't do public policy unless it is based on science. And this really is, you know, the whole world looks at us and they're saying, what is going on here? You know, as all of you know, Donald Trump is the greatest of everything. Everything he does is great and big and extraordinary. Now, among his many other attributes, you didn't know this, he is one of the world's great scientists. He's a modest guy. He didn't want to share that with you, but that's the case. And Donald Trump has concluded that climate change is a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese. Now, the fact that we will, trust me, we will. All right. But now, I'm not shocked that Trump thinks climate change is a hoax. That's what virtually all the Republicans do. Okay. But that it was perpetrated by the Chinese shocked me, because I thought he would have thought it would be perpetrated by the Mexicans or the Muslims or anybody else. But bottom line is we are going to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel. When we think big, we also have to address another issue.
and I'm criticized for this, and that's fine. Every major country on earth, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Holland, Italy, Canada, Scandinavia, every single country on earth, major country, provides health care to all people of the world. In fact, there is just one major country, you may know that country, that does not guarantee health care to all people. You're living in it. Now, the Affordable Care Act, in my view, has done some very important things. We've done away with this obscenity called pre-existing conditions. We have expanded health insurance to more than 17 million people. And we have ended discrimination in terms of premium cost for women who are being charged more than men. But today, despite the gains of the ACA, 29 million Americans still have no health insurance. Many of you are underinsured with high deductibles and copayments, right? And all of you and every American is paying the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs because we are being ripped off by an extremely greedy pharmaceutical industry. And then to add insult to injury, we end up paying far more per capita for health care than do the people of any other country on earth. We spend almost 3 times more than the British, 50% more than the French. And that is why I believe, I've been criticized for saying it, so let me say it again. I believe that health care is a right for all people. That is why I will do my best to move this country to a Medicare for all health care program. One of the arguments being waged against me is, well, Bernie is a nice guy. Bernie's a nice guy, but he just can't win. One of the arguments is that Bernie can't win. All right. Okay. We need a medic. We need a medic. Somebody fainted. All right, let's get a medic out there. Take a break for a second. Okay. We have medics here, doctors, nurses. We have trained personnel here. Okay, let's get some help for that person. Well, let's keep it down for a minute, yeah. Let's get some help now. Person okay? Okay. So I just want to say this about electability. For a start, polls go up and down, but almost all of the national polls and state polls that have put me up against Donald Trump has us winning and winning big. A recent CNN poll had us up by 12 points. But more important than polls, I will tell you why, together, we will beat Trump. We will beat Trump
Because the American people do not want a president who insults Mexicans, and all of Latin America, who are our closest neighbors. The American people do not want a president who insults Muslims, one of the largest religions in the world. The American people do not want a president who insults women, or a president who insults African Americans. All of you should remember, please do not forget that Trump was one of the leaders of the so-called birther movement trying to delegitimize the President of the United States. I always have found it interesting that they went after President Obama because his father was born in Kenya. My father was born in Poland. Nobody asked me for my birth certificate. Maybe it just has something to do with the color of my skin, I don't know. We will defeat Donald Trump because the American people know that togetherness, standing together, trumps divisiveness. The American people know that community helping each other trumps selfishness. And most importantly, the American people know, and every religion teaches us this, that love trumps hatred. On Tuesday, Michigan has an enormously important primary. If we will win that primary, if the voter turnout is high, let's make it a high turnout. Thank you all.
Aloha. I'm Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. As a veteran of 2 Middle East deployments, I know firsthand the cost of war. I know how important it is that our Commander-in-Chief has the sound judgment required to know when to use America's military power and when not to use that power. As a Vice Chair of the DNC, I'm required to stay neutral in Democratic primaries, but I cannot remain neutral any longer. The stakes are just too high. That's why today I'm endorsing Senator Bernie Sanders to be our next President and Commander-in-Chief of the United States. We need a Commander-in-Chief who has foresight, who exercises good judgment, and who understands the need for a robust foreign policy which defends the safety and security of the American people, and who will not waste precious lives and money on interventionist wars of regime change. Such counterproductive wars undermine our national security and economic prosperity. As these elections continue across the country, the American people are faced with a very clear choice. We can elect a president who will lead us into more interventionist wars of regime change, or we can elect a president who will usher in a new era of peace and prosperity. It's with this clear choice in mind that I'm resigning as vice chair of the DNC so that I can strongly support Bernie Sanders as the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. And now I ask you, stand with me and support Bernie Sanders.